For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live on our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours to talk about the undefeated Winnipeg Jets, looking to make it 8 victories in a row as they'll do battle later on tonight against the Calgary Flames, a similarly upstart team to begin this 24-25 NHL season. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Exciting Saturday on tap. You got the Jets, you got us in the morning, you got the Bombers in the afternoon, you got the Jets at night, then you got the post-game show to follow. Moose.
Yours truly is doing color. I mean, a little shout out for your boy here, but whatever.
Hit the Manouk Moose minute bumper already. We're only 2 minutes into the show, Dave, but let's get it going bright and early.
There you go. Exactly. The Moose home opener as well. It's a big sports Saturday here in Peg City. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Ezzy, I had the great pleasure of seeing you last night in a social setting.
Yeah.
Dave, sorry to hear that you weren't invited.
It's rare too that Drew and I socialize, but yeah, you didn't miss anything, Dave. No shout
it's
out.
Weird. I actually had anything better to do.
No, you had to get ready for the Moose game this afternoon. I get it.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, we missed you, but yeah, Drew and I saw each other in a rare social situation. As most people know that listen to this show or watch the show regularly, they know that Drew and I do not speak to each other outside of this show. So it was rare. Like we had to I had to pretend. Yeah, exactly. It's partly that, Dave, but it's also like I had to pretend like I cared about Drew, right? And he had to pretend that he cared about me. So it was really lots of awkward chit chat. We don't really have a lot in common. So, but yeah, I digress here. But you know, guys, this is just continuing to be I do. But Drew mentions obviously the 7-0. I think, guys, for the record, by the way, and I did listen to the post game show the day after, even though I went to bed early. I told you guys I just wasn't feeling great, had a bit of a headache and had a bit of a long week. So you guys obviously, as you usually do, you did the heavy lifting. I agree with Dave, though. The Jets at 7-0, you'd think, okay, they've got a big buffer in their division. They're only 2 points up on Minnesota and Dallas. And obviously Dallas has played an extra game, so we should mention that. But to Dave's point on the post-game show, it was made a couple times by both of you guys. The Jets need these points at this point in the season because there's other teams. It's not like, nobody's noticed, but, Colorado's now 4-4 after starting 0-4. Cale Makar's leading the league in points, which nobody should be surprised by that. He's the Norris favorite. But, this is just fun. I'm sure you guys around town and, Drew, I'm sure, a lot of people are talking about it out and about at Rumors and elsewhere. Like, this is just awesome to have the Jets first place undefeated at this point in the season, right? It's almost like people in Winnipeg, it's like we're not deserving of this start. You know what I mean? Like, people are waiting for this to collapse. I'm all about this. Like, let's keep this going. Let's go 8-0, 9-0, 10-0. Like, let's keep it going as far as we can. This is just way too much fun. But I do think we should be calling this a 15-game win streak, Dave, not just an 8-game win streak, because we got to go back. If the NHL's counting the 7 games in a row, the 8 wins in a row last year, let's keep it going.
That's what they do. They count last year's winning streak as part of a consecutive regulation winning streak. So the Jets are really only 3 games away, or 3 wins away from setting an all-time NHL record. Cart before the horse. We won't delve too deep into that as the Jets have the Calgary Flames later on today, which of course will be a focus of this morning's show, Dave. But the Jets, they did it in Seattle on Thursday night. Not their best effort of the season by any stretch of the imagination, but they still managed to pull it off in overtime. They give up the 2-goal lead late in the third period, but they come back and they win it in overtime to stay perfect and move ahead to Calgary, where they will wrap up the 3-game road trip today against the Calgary Flames. I want to start, though, with the Jets, the forward group. I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers earlier today, and I don't want to be, the negative Nelly, although so often I am accused of playing that role on the show. I want to play more of a devil's advocate right now because the 7-0 start is fantastic. Let's not overstate that. Let's not pretend that that's not the case. It is fantastic. But there's some signs, some flashing signs, I would say, if you look a little bit deeper at some of the analytical numbers, that would suggest there's probably a regression to the mean coming from the Winnipeg Jets.
Hold on, you're saying, Drew, that the Jets aren't going to go 96-0 this year?
They're not going to go 96.
Pardon me, 98-0. I forgot a couple of those.
I'm saying that that there are signs that there's going to be an adjustment into the success rate. Now that's inevitable. Every team will go through that. No team is going to be perfect, and unless you're really, really terrible, no team is going to be as bad as they look.
Unless you're Mr.
on the
Perfect.
ice. Well, unless you're Mr.
Kurt
Perfect.
Hennig.
Yeah, may rest in peace. But in any event, is there? How concerned would you? Let me start with the top line initially. The Scheifele, Connor, Vilardi. Again, there's not possession positive. They're 48%, so it's close to 50-50. Their expected goals is 44%. In terms of their expected goals percentage. How concerned would you be about their numbers? At this point through 7 games, is there more there for them, or do you think that's just where they're going to be if they stay together for the majority of the season?
It's a valid question because we know that that line together has not been a positive possession line, right? Like they've been, I think it's somewhere around 45 or 46, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers, but the reality is that line, there's more shots directed at the Jets net, and they're outscored when they're together, right? That doesn't mean that they're not great players. Obviously, Gabe Vilardi, huge goal for him, right, Dave? Like you could listening to Scott Arniel, you could tell that it was kind of eating away at Gabe Vilardi, that the Jets were having a lot of success, 6-0, but Vilardi didn't have a goal, right? So like Scheifele and Connor, they're popping in their goals, but you could tell a guy like Vilardi, like he needs to score goals. He's a goal scorer. He can set goals up too, but I think we'd all agree he's more of a goal scorer than a playmaker, right? Kenny Wiebe, our good friend, was predicting a 40-goal season. So obviously, Vilardi doesn't like Kenny Wiebe very much. No, I'm kidding. He's got to score. He's got to score, at a higher pace to get to 40 at this point, right? But I think back to Drew's question about the top line. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, guys, like the Jets are 7-0, and the second line didn't really get going till that 4th game against San Jose, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's still more for that line. If you think about their kind of slow start lately, they've been fantastic, namely, Ehlers and Perfetti, and Nemesnikov's no slouch either. But that top line, there is more to be desired there. Look, I don't think that anybody is expecting that line to be a great shutdown line like the Lowry line. Nobody's expecting that, but you want more production at 5-on-5. And that's something that, even though the power play has been fantastic. I mean, they didn't score against Seattle, but what did they only have 2 chances or 3 chances? I think 2. So obviously you only get a couple chances, and
they scored right after the power play expired.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. Nino's goal was
and the overtime winner came on a delayed penalty. So they did have an extra guy on the ice.
But that's even more to my point.
If I really want to nitpick you there, I can.
Well, you're just adding to my point that the Jets have been, as opposed to last year, they've actually been very reliant on power play goals this year, right? Which is not a bad thing because special teams was something that everyone, noted as going to be a key to the Jets season. And so far, both the power play and the penalty kill have been good. But I think, with the Scheifele, Vilardi, Connor line, it's when the Jets aren't winning games, that's when you get a little bit more concerned, because right now they're winning games. They're getting goals from the defense. They're getting goals from, Nino Niederreiter popping in 2 goals. Obviously, the Nemesnikov line has been really good lately. But I think, Dave, once you're in a 2, 3, 4 game losing streak, and let's say the Scheifele line isn't producing, then you're a little bit concerned. I'm not saying that, Scheifele is going to be demoted or anything like that, but then you would see a switch. And we've talked about, switching Ehlers and Connor or something like that. Or maybe you switch Perfetti and Vilardi. That's something that isn't talked about a lot. But the point is, when you're winning, I don't see this, I guess, going back to the original question, I don't think Scott Arniel is breaking up the Scheifele line, considering they keep winning game after game.
So Dave, that's what you wrote. I think it was on, I think you put it on Twitter or you put it in the morning papers, or talking about the practice report yesterday for the Jets. I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? I mean, you look at the 5-on-5 goals for, goals against for Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi, 2 goals for at 5-on-5, 6 goals against at 5-on-5. Sometimes it's easier to make a change when things are working in terms of the macro sense. So the micro of that line might not be great at 5-on-5, but the macro of the team overall at 7-0 is terrific. So do you think that maybe they should have taken that as an opportunity to try something a little bit different before it comes at the before it results in a loss, let's say?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. And let's be realistic. The Jets aren't winning necessarily because of their 5-on-5. They're winning because their power play is the best power play in the NHL. As you've said, Drew, they've scored a number of goals, whether they're delayed penalties or 6-on-5 situations. That's what they're doing now. They're being able to either tie a game or win a game, as we saw in overtime. And so the power play has been very good. The PK has been good. These are two things. And Connor Hellebuyck has been exceptional. So those are, if you ask me the reasons for why the Jets are 7-0, I think that the depth of scoring also is probably the third aspect that I would focus on. But I'd say Connor Hellebuyck, special teams, and depth of scoring. Now, the top line,
6 guys at a point per game right now, Dave.
That's right. But and as we talked about on the last show, the fact is that the Lowry line is not just holding their own in terms of preventing goals, but they're also scoring, right? You need Nino Niederreiter to have 4 goals. You need Adam Lowry to score. You need Mason Appleton to score. You can't have them just be a line that just prevents goals. Now, obviously, it's important when they go up against the top lines, but ultimately, you want to see more from the Scheifele line. It just has to be. And so, like you said, Drew, you can't at 5-on-5 have 2 goals for and 6 goals against. It's not good. Now, again, one thing with Scott Arniel, and you see the benefit of that, is sometimes he wants to give these guys a little bit more latitude. Now you can say, well, look at what they saw last year, but I think it's out of the gate. How much runway is he going to give this trio, similar to what Perfetti, Nemesnikov, and Ehlers had? Because look, after 3 games, their numbers weren't good. They looked terrible. They looked lethargic, and then they figured it out. They got it together. So to me, that's one of those areas that, is he going to give them a little bit more? Is it going to come? Does it have to have a loss in order to do it? I don't know. I mean, again, I think he just wants to give them a 10-game sample size and say, this is what we looked at, 10 games or maybe 15 games, and then start to make changes. Because as they've banked the points, I agree with you. It's easy to do it now, actually, because you're winning. The feelings are good. But, again, like I said, it's ultimately it's his decision. And, you're right. We can look at it. We can analyze it. And when you look at the raw numbers, they don't look great for that line. So it would be natural to say, well, how can you offset things? But I think also his factoring is, if the second line or the Nemesnikov line is working well, do you want to make that change? So that's the other factor I think he's considering.
And I just wanted to mention, sorry, Drew, one thing here, and this is courtesy of Connor Hrabchak, and I'm positive as Ruben knocks on the door here in my downstairs office and screams for me. Pretty sure you guys can't hear that.
You're positive that you regret having children is what it is.
Yeah, no.
You're positive about.
Best thing to ever happen to me, Drew. But right now, yeah, it's a little bit annoying because I can hear Ruben giggling, and I'm trying to keep my thought here. But this is courtesy of a tweet from Connor Hrabchak, and I was going to say, I know he won't mind me stealing this because obviously he's a member of Illegal Curve now, but he put out the not sure if you guys saw this, he put out the top 9 forwards ice time versus Seattle. And I thought it was interesting because Scheifele, okay, he led with just under 20 minutes, 19:45. Then you had Vilardi at just over 17, Connor at 16.5. But then you had Ehlers at 15.5, Nemesnikov just over 14 minutes, Perfetti at 13:47. Lowry, Appleton, Niederreiter were 7, 8, 9 with 13, 12, and 11 minutes. The reason why I bring that up is because that's kind of what you want to see with the ice time, right? Like you want to see the Ehlers, Nemesnikov, Perfetti line. You want them to be ranked second in terms of 5-on-5 ice time, and you want them to be, 2 or 3 minutes behind the Scheifele, Connor, Vilardi line, I would say. Like Ehlers talked about it this week, right, Dave? Like he said that he doesn't need 20 minutes, or I forget what the exact number was when he was asked about it. And I think that's significant because what you're seeing is Scott Arniel is rewarding the Nemesnikov line because they've been playing better. And you could argue that he should have been playing them more, this whole time. but let's be honest, they weren't great the first 3 games. So I think Dave's right. And we have the comment up from, I think it was 5-A game. I don't think you want to mess with the chemistry. You've got 3 lines that are playing really well, and Scheifele's line's not playing. There you go. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to take Ehlers off the second line when he's been so good with Perfetti and Nemesnikov over the last 4 games? I just don't think you're going to mess with it. I think, Drew, if they're struggling for another 3, 4, 5 games, then maybe you see a switch, especially if there's losses in the ledger as opposed to wins. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. The Scheifele line has not been great at 5-on-5, but what we've talked about over the last year or so is that line usually is outplayed at 5-on-5.
Right, which obviously leads to the question of why does it stay together?
Right,
and
that's another question. Yeah.
I understand the argument that the Ehlers, Nemesnikov, Perfetti line is going well right now. They've outscored their opponents 4-1 at 5-on-5 so far this season, and that's even after the slow start. I just we
should start calling Cole Perfetti Corsi Perfetti, really, at this point.
He's been great as of late. He's absolutely been terrific for the Jets, and really breaking through as everyone had hoped and as a lot of people had expected would occur this season with the change in head coach and sort of that elevated level of responsibility. I just can't help but wonder, is there more on that bone for the dog to chew if things were swapped around? And I totally get coaches generally don't like mixing things up when you are winning, like changing the lineup when you are winning. But you just saw them do it not that long ago, that Logan Stanley now seems to be a regular as opposed to Hayden Fleury. And the, whether or not that's the right decision, I have time for Hayden Fleury's game. I would have liked to see him get a little bit of a longer runway as it is. We know what Logan Stanley's game is, but whatever on that front.
Stanley's been pretty solid. I mean,
I
know on the first Seattle goal, like he was out there that led to the Matty Beniers goal. I'm not saying that was, I think it was Jared McCann, right, who fought through Stanley's checking and then got the puck to Beniers, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I think Stanley's been fine. Like, I honestly think Stanley and Fleury are pretty similar. Like, they're pretty interchangeable. I don't think there's much of a drop off or a boost, Dave, from either one of those guys. Like, I think both of those guys are pretty solid defensemen. Like, they're going to make some mistakes.
They're 6, 7, 8 guys is really what they are. I mean, they're bottom of your lineup defensemen, and I don't mean that in any sort of insulting manner. There's not a lot of upside to either of them. They're guys who are serviceable on this Winnipeg Jets defense. Are they serviceable on a should they be in the lineup if you are a true Stanley Cup caliber defense? Probably not.
If Heinola is healthy, he's playing on that third pair. Let's make no mistake about that. When he gets back and he's healthy, he's going to be given the shot there on the third pair.
Well, that's still a big if, of course. Scott Arniel talked about, I think Kenny asked him this on the road trip, Dave, about Heinola and his, timeline, and it's still sort of an unknown timeline. It's not like it's, ramping up and imminent. You're going to see him on the ice in a yellow non-contact jersey before he sheds that and becomes a full participant. There's still a ways away, if you will, from getting Heinola back healthy. And if you had said that,
feels like it could be like another month the way he was talking about it, Dave. Like, it doesn't seem like Heinola is going to be back in a couple of weeks if he's not even skating yet.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that to me is, so you still have that as a concern.
I mean, nobody likes it. It just, like, let's not sugarcoat it. It sucks for him because of the injury he suffered last year, right? Yeah. So it's unfortunate for a guy who at this point, like, he just can't seem to stick in the NHL full time. And it's not because of anything he's doing. It's just because he's suffering injuries. But you're right. I mean, Heinola, it's going to be a while before he's back for sure.
If the team continues to play with these lines at 5-on-5 and get similar results at 5-on-5, I mean, then they're going to need the power play to continue to be as successful as it has been. And we'll talk about the power play in hour number 2 of today's show. John Goins, who does a lot of great video work for Daily Faceoff, he's a Montreal Canadiens analyst and Laval Rocket analyst on TSN 690. He did a great breakdown for Daily Faceoff on the Jets' power play success. He's going to join us in the bottom of hour number 2. But to your point, Ezzy, about the time on ice, I guess Connor's point that you stole about the time on ice in the last game.
Connor was just I mean, I could have easily looked at the time on ice. Connor's a young upstart journalist. He's not a lazy old guy like me, so he did the work, and I just screenshotted it and made sure. See, Drew, I'm always preparing for the show. I got my notes, I got my screenshots.
That's good.
You know, that's me.
Good. That's the good kind of prep work. I like to see
Yeah.
that. My point there was that, it seems like Scott Arniel is deploying his lines, Dave, based on who's playing well, which is what you want. You
Right.
play well, you're going to get more ice time. When Ehlers and Nemesnikov and Perfetti were struggling earlier in the year, their ice time was of the third forward group over the boards.
Mhm.
And that was the chatter where Lowry's line was getting the second most ice time because they were playing better. They deserved it. Now that Perfetti and Ehlers and the Mesnikov are going a little bit more, they're seeing that bump up in ice time. I don't think there's anything wrong with a coach saying, you guys are going well, you get more ice time. It's the carrot and the stick. You play well, you get the carrot, you get more ice time.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the Scheifele line, if I had it right in that Seattle game, was skipped in the third period, were they not? Because
That's what our buddy Joe Piscucci referenced on Twitter.
Yeah.
It seemed like they missed a couple shifts.
Right, and it was right after, I think, I don't remember which goal, but the fact is that, look, I think it has to be a rewards based thing for the Jets, and you can't just automatically expect anything, right? Yeah, you're the top line, but okay, so you need to be able to produce offensively. But what is this whole team based on? This whole team is based on defense and good defensive structure. Not exactly a hallmark of that trio, as we've seen. And I agree with those folks who are saying that, we know what they are. We saw them last year, right? But the fact of the matter is that this is Scott Arniel's team. This is Scott Arniel wanting to be able to put his stamp on this team, and he's going to see how this works, and he's going to see if it works or if it doesn't work. And look, again, you want to be like, they have to want to be better defensively, and we're seeing it in some flashes. Are we seeing it consistently? No, because obviously, again, you're looking at the numbers, Drew. It's hard to argue, right? 2 goals for it, 5 on 5, 6 against. Like, that's not now. And again, I agree with the comments. Like, Gabriel Lardy has had some great A chances that he's been snake bit through the first 7 games. Obviously scored last game, but like, he's definitely been snake bit for a number of games this season where he's had some good chances. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the way the team is overall performing. And right now this team's performed. So this is a team that is feeling good about themselves. And I think the greater point, Drew, is that you've got 3 lines working well, and you've got a goaltender who's exceptional, or goaltenders, because I thought Eric Comrie was excellent in his one game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And you've got special teams that really seem to have found themselves. And again, like, people could say, well, the Jets only have the 15th ranked PK. I suspect folks would have been jumping for joy if the Jets had the 15th ranked PK last year, as opposed to the 28 and 27.
Let's just pump the brakes. We're 7 games into the season, so let's not, like, 15th. I mean, the difference between the 10th ranked PK and the 20th ranked PK is like a percentage point,
for sure,
or 2. So, right, like,
no, I
PK,
agree.
No, I know you know that, Dave, but I'm just saying, like, the Jets PK has been fine this year, and
it's
like
hard
you said,
to believe that it's going to have a dramatic drop off, though. The way it's been playing as of
and
late.
the thing is, it's you at this point in the season, a team scores 1 power play goal on you, and your PK percentage is going to go down like 2 or 3% or more than that, right? So the PK has been fine, and I think Dave mentioned special teams, and also Scott Arniel putting his stamp on the team, and this, I think, relates to the Scheifele Connor Velarde line. I got to admit, guys, I think I might be a little bit wrong, or I was too quick to say this, but I've actually liked Connor on the PK. I know Scheifele's not playing on the PK, but I actually like, if Connor's going to be aggressive and use his speed and try to create turnovers, then I think I'm going to change my tune. And I always thought Connor would be more effective as a PK, a penalty killer as Scheifele. But I got to say, I don't think I have egg on my face or anything like that. I think.
Well, you do. You had scrambled eggs for breakfast, though. That's the problem.
You know what? That's amazing that you say that, because I always make my kids scrambled eggs on the weekends, and I made scrambled eggs today. It's one of the few things I can make, Drew. Scrambled eggs. I can, barbecue hot dogs, and I can make craft dinner.
Do you want me to pull up some old video clips of you, or audio clips of you making food at 3:30 in the morning, like frozen pierogies in a frying pan or something? I have those handy.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure at my old house I fell asleep while that pierogi was cooking. And
it's amazing.
Shout out to our good friend Hart, who like woke up at like 7 a.m, and there's like, why is there like a smoldering pierogi on the oven? Anyways, those were dark times.
Let's it's fortuitous timing. This just came out courtesy Murat Atesh in The Athletic. It can sure be found on illegalcurve.com in the morning papers as well. And if it's not there yet, Dave is going to obviously have it there. This is what Scott Arniel had to say about Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde. Your lines change all year long. Even Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid don't stay together. When it comes to the big time, they go together, but at the end of the day, over 82 games, you're going to change your lines. You're going to have to trust your feel as a head coach. Is it time to make that change? Is it time to change it up a bit? And you're right. There is chemistry built. A lot of history that you see with great lines is there's always been two guys who make it work. So who are those two guys? Is it Connor and Scheifele? I don't know. Is it Gabriel Vilardi and Scheifele? I don't know. That's part of what we've been trying to build. Injuries disrupt things sometimes, particularly with Gabe last year. And there's the human element. The players like playing with each other. They have a feel for each other. They make plays sometimes, and the only reason they get away with it is because they've done it a bunch of times. You're comfortable when you go into a high-pressure game and you know what your line mate is going to do. Sometimes there's that too. That's where I don't get carried away with analytics. That's Jets head coach Scott Arniel in an article that just came out this morning, courtesy of Murat Atesh of The Athletic. So some interesting comments there from the Jets head coach about his reasoning and his logic and his thinking when it comes to keeping that line together, as we've talked about for the last 27 or so minutes.
You just can't, Dave, you can't have your top line outscored at 5-on-5 like this for a long period of time. It's just not sustainable. Like, I appreciate that answer. But your top line has to be a line that goes out there and at the very least, is giving you even possession at the very least, right? And you want it to be a possession positive line. And I think that's the issue. It's not, the Jets are still winning, and we're not, Drew, even though Drew's being a negative Nelly here, Debbie Downer, it's the reality is that line hasn't been lights out 5-on-5, but the reality is they're doing their damage in overtime and they're doing their damage on the power play, right? But I think it's something to keep a note of. Like, the obvious one is you switch Ehlers, and then most likely that you see the instant results with Ehlers, Scheifele, and Vilardi. I mean, we've talked about this how many times over the years.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add is I think that comment is consistent with what I think he wants to see, which is Gabriel Vilardi out of the gate, like not going down in game 3 and losing whatever it was, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of the season to his injury. I think he wants to see what this starting runway looks like with Vilardi, Scheifele, and Connor. So that to me is what I think we're seeing from Scott Arniel. That's what I said earlier in my answer. Again, folks don't have to like it, but he's the one who ultimately has to make that decision. So yeah, you do want to see that one line being, again, at least even. But I suspect, again, like that was the thought process behind it, and it's kind of confirmed based on what Murat is reporting there in that story.
There you go. When we come back this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, our good friend Kelly Moore, broadcaster extraordinaire. You know him from the Jets games on CJOB 680.
The official scrum starter.
Yes, exactly right. Kelly Moore going to join us next on the program. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's a Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's brought to you by Play Now. Learn to bet with Play Now, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. Don't go anywhere. Much more to come on this Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning, talking about the Winnipeg Jets as we do each and every Saturday. We also do it, of course, after the Jets game as well. They'll play the Calgary Flames later tonight, a game you can hear on Power 97 and 680 CJOB. The man himself will be the voice of the pre and post game show. Kelly Moore, Jets game night host, joins us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show this morning.
Kelly, that baby grand piano back there.
I was gonna say, what a background! Wow.
I'm bringing in Liberace, and then later on, I might even, bring in a couple of other guests as well. So
that is a setup. That is swanky. I would have worn a 3-piece suit. It would be like tuxedo night back when the Jets and the Habs used to play back in the 70s. Had I known you were going to be bringing that to the show this morning.
Well, I wanted to bring a little something because, of course, I always hang out with Icy Hot, aka Dave Minuk, at the Jets practices, and so he's got the hat on backwards, he's got the shorts, no socks in the shoes. So I just wanted to jazz it up a little bit for you guys.
You know,
Dave could have easily been like a pro surfer if he wanted to. Like his entire vibe fits like pro surfer, right?
Oh, Ezzy, you just gave me an idea for a new nickname. Icy hot / surfer boy.
Yes, because when you think Dave, you think aerodynamic surfing on waves. The two words just come to mind, seamlessly.
Yeah.
Kelly, good morning again. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, talking about the Jets, the perfect start in the win-loss column. But given that we like to delve deeper a little bit more than just the baseline statistics here, we spent the first 30 minutes or so talking about the first line, the Scheifele, Connor, Velarde line, and more for them to give, and how long of a runway they should have, given that they've been outscored at 5-on-5 so far this season. We read the Scott Arniel quote that's in the in Murat Atesh's Athletic article today, saying he wants to see if continue to work out, see if they can have more time together. What are your thoughts, your perspective on that? It's been starts and stops over the last couple of years with the two of them together, the three of them together. How much more runway would you like to see them given to improve the 5-on-5 results?
Yeah, what do you see for those numbers again, where they've been outscored 5-on-5?
2 goals for, 6 goals against.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. I think if you boil that down to home and away, they would be that would be almost even for at home, because on the first 2 games of this road trip, they have been they've been on for both goals against St. Louis that Brandon Saad scored, and 2 of the 3 goals against Seattle, not the tying marker. So I think one of the things that we also have to consider is on the road. Clearly, Scott Arniel doesn't have the last say on matchups, so they're out there against the opponent's number 1 line. AKA St. Louis. They were out there against the Saad line for a lot of that game. Same thing against the Beniers line in Seattle on Thursday night. So they're taking the hard minutes of those number 1 lines, and to me, that also creates a bit of a benefit for the Lowry line and also for the Nemesnikov line, and you get a purer matchup. 4th line versus 4th line. I'm not making excuses for these guys. If the Jets are going to proceed further, they have to be better. But I think we also have to provide some context to those numbers as well. And you guys might have done that, but that's certainly what I have seen, through the early part of this season.
That's an interesting point you bring up there, Kelly, about, that they're losing the road 5-on-5 matchups because they're not getting the matchups. But what does that say about the top line, that they can't go head to head against opponents' top line? Or conversely, what does it say about opposing coaches that they don't mind matching up against the Jets' top line?
They don't. And I guess the other part that I would say is that, there are always 2 teams out there on the ice. And when you're playing against best on best, the idea is to try to break even that way. And so, that line isn't getting credit, though, for the overtime goals that they've manufactured, or, in this case, a delayed penalty type goal. So to me, that's the other thing you have to weigh into this as well. They might be coming out on the short end of the 5-on-5, but then the other teams are coming out on the short end of the odd man situations. And the Jets have now scored 4 goals in 7 games, either 6-on-5 with the goaltender out for the extra attacker, or in a delayed penalty type of scenario. And so we sometimes get fixated on 5-on-5, and I'm not trying to sweep the the deficiencies under the rug. They need to get better, but I am also trying to provide a broad picture of these guys aren't getting gobsmacked every time they come out on the ice.
I think that's a lot of good points that you make, Kelly, and that's part of the reason, or your points are the reason why I don't think that we're going to see that line broken up anytime soon. Whoever has the magic number in terms of how many more games they go and continue to, let's say, get outplayed at 5-on-5 before Scott Arniel breaks up that line. I mean, they're probably making a lot more, certainly making a lot more money than I do, but I don't have the answers to that. So I'm with you. I think that you have to put context to the numbers, and because the Jets are winning and they're having the success on the power play, and in the overtime period and on delayed penalty situations. I think that's why you're going to see Scheifele, Connor, Velarde stick together. I want to ask you about Cole Perfetti, though, because he might be the least enthusiastic goal celebrator that we've ever seen. And I actually love it because, he just gets a goal or he assists on a big goal. And it's just like, yeah, that's what I'm paid to do, right? But I think you'd agree that it's just fun to watch him play right now. Like, he had no points in his first 3 games. That Nemesnikov line was being criticized a lot, rightly so. They weren't great. And then obviously Perfetti and that line had their breakout game against San Jose, and he's got 8 points now in his last 4 games. He just looks like, everything that we expected him to be when the Jets drafted him 10th overall.
Well, you guys are probably going to boot me off early here because I'm going to drive you nuts with the context approach. So I'd half agree with you, Ezzy, that that line wasn't playing the way that they should have for the first 3 games offensively. But if you go back and watch on the video, they were doing everything that they're supposed to do without the puck. So I thought that was actually a credit to that line, that nobody got impatient when the pucks weren't going in. Nobody got frustrated when they didn't have the puck. They were still doing their job that way. And I also think, just before we talk about Cole Perfetti, the other part of that, keeping the lines intact right now, as long as the other 3 lines are playing well, that could also factor into how long, if at all, the coaching staff decides that, okay, we're going to try for a bit of a different look on that top unit. So that might enter also into it, because who could argue with how, the Nemesnikov, I mean, you're not going to mess with that Lowry line, I think, unless injuries dictate that you have to. And then the 4th line is performing pretty well, albeit, just other than Rasmus Kupari, Alex Iafallo and Morgan Barron still looking for their first goals. But now back to Cole Perfetti. Guys, let's face it, he's not a gazelle on ice. And the Jets knew that when they drafted him 10th overall back in 2020. But the one thing that Cole Perfetti brings in spades is his on-ice vision. Man, his hockey IQ, and you guys have mentioned this and have heard it. I mean, it's off the charts. Like that pass that he made to Nino Niederreiter on the game-winning goal, I thought he kind of, I've looked back on it a couple times. My first reaction was I thought he'd shot just a little bit, and that's why Decord got caught moving to his left. But that's just a pure pass. Does he get a little bit of luck as it ticks off of somebody right to Nino? Yeah, and then Nino does a nice job of, a little bit of a half-hitch delay and firing it into the net. But the other thing I just really like about Cole Perfetti right now is what he's doing in all 3 zones. That stick lift in St. Louis, I mean, that was a huge play in the 3rd period that prevented what could have been a Blues tying goal. So there are those plays as well. But and then of course on the power play, that goal by Niederreiter comes 3 seconds after the expiration of a penalty. But let's face it, he's got that open ice up the left side because the Kraken are a man short. So it's not a power play goal, but the power play did have a little impact on it. And how valuable is that to the Winnipeg Jets right now to have a number 2 unit that is going as well as, that combination of Perfetti, Niederreiter, Nemesnikov, Pionk, and then, whether it's Alex Iafallo, whether they put Colin Miller on there, it's going pretty well. So I like Cole Perfetti. I wish he'd loosen up a little bit, but you know what? if Captain Serious is, how he has to operate to be successful, then don't mess with it.
I love it. I think it's great. Yeah, it kind of reminds you of Jonathan Toews, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Kelly, first of all, despite the slings and arrows I were thrown my way due to my attire,
with nothing with love, Dave.
I know, but I just want to
envy because I can't pull off that one.
But I was going to say, I was going to start we're going to start with a statement rather than asking you a question, because even though I've told you personally, I want to congratulate you in front of our audience on being inducted into the Manitoba Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
It was announced over the summer, and it took place earlier this month. So
very
congratulations
well
on our behalf on that, because you are a big part of this fabric of this sports community here in Manitoba. So I just want to start it off by congratulating you on receiving that accolade.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, it was interesting because when I got the phone call, it was back in either late May or early June, and I'm thinking, because I usually MC that Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame dinner. So I'm thinking, the Jets schedule isn't even out yet. How can I,
How can I commit?
I don't know. And so, yeah, that was my thought process when they called me. And then when they gave me the news, I was completely humbled. I mean, you guys know who's in the media wing of that particular category for the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame. I had the incredible privilege and pleasure to work with Don Whitman on the broadcasts when I first came to Winnipeg in 1994. What a huge benefit that was for me to get my feet wet. And the guys that I followed, Sod Keelback and Friar Nicholson and Matty and Cactus and all the luminaries who I hold in the absolute highest esteem. So to be part of that, and then to be part of the class that I was in 2024 is something that I'll hold near and dear.
Well, it's unbelievable. And Shane Knighty isn't even the toughest
Oh.
man going into that class, right? Like, obviously, I'm talking about you. You're the toughest man going in that class.
Hey, listen, Ezzy, you're going to lose a lot of money if you bet on me coming out on top of nines. But you know what? The sheriff, he was the only one that didn't have either a written speech or notes for his acceptance speech, and pulled it off incredibly. Being in our business, somebody that can ad lib without a hitch in their delivery is really something. And the sheriff pulled it off beautifully. So, yeah, it was, and Russ Romanek, I had the chance to work with him on the Moose broadcast my last year as the play-by-play guy there. The late Wayne Descour. Did you guys have any dealings with him through the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League? Well,
No.
I used to coach junior women's softball, and Wayne was a coach and an umpire as well. So we formed a really good friendship, and you guys would have loved him. He was just an absolute wonderful human being. And Laurent Kerbrat in Saint Laurent, who slept in the rink so that kids would have ice up in that area of Manitoba, the first ever winner in the grassroots category. Like, just such an incredible.
I have heard of him through Hockey Manitoba, Kelly.
Yeah,
I have just he's the man in Saint Laurent. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I would dearly love to have the chance to have a beer. Maybe 2-3 with him just to find out a little bit more about him. His daughter delivered his acceptance speech because, of course, being inducted posthumously. But just a wonderful night. Anyway, long drawn out.
And of course, the sheriff Shane Knighty is being up for knighthood. He's up for knighthood for having to deal with Lawless on a regular basis. So that's really where he gets quite honored as well.
Yeah, and I'd throw Hustler in there as well. From back from the days. But it's great to see Manitobans get their just due for sure.
All right, well, congratulations once again, Kelly. And now let's get back to the hockey talk,
Yes.
Jets talk. And I don't think any player was going to be scrutinized more this season than Neil Pionk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the focus was going to be on him and how he was going to rebound. And we all know what he went through, injury and personal tragedy for the last few years. So from your perspective, through 7 games, he's producing over a point per game. What are you seeing from Neil Pionk so far this season?
Confidence. Supreme confidence. He is playing like he did in the first couple of years when he came over from the New York Rangers in the Jacob Trouba trade. And the one thing, and I am not an analytics guy. It's not that I don't believe in analytics. It's just that I am not smart enough to understand them. So I leave that up to the other brighter minds in the room.
That's not true, Kelly. It's just sometimes it's not that you're not smart enough. It's just like sometimes the numbers just you get like inundated with them.
Yeah,
that's what it is, right? Like I think you appreciate because I listen to the broadcast a lot, and I know you guys mention analytics, but it's kind of a question of picking and choosing which ones are the most effective or most that resonate the most with your audience, right?
Yeah, and I also try to combine those numbers too with the areas of the game that analytics just simply cannot measure, and that's the emotion or the physical part of the game. And Dave, you mentioned the tragedy that Neil Pionk had to carry with him, along with some of the other guys on the team, Alex Iafallo, Dominic Toninato when he was up with the Jets, over the loss of Adam Johnson, which I think we're right around the 1-year anniversary of that, if memory serves correct.
Yeah, horrible.
And it was an incredible burden for Neil to have to bear. And Dave, you were there when Scott Arniel, I think it was either after day 1 or day 2, where he talked about Neil playing through some kind of a foot injury last year that certainly had an impact on his performance. And so I think you measure those things, and then the impact that now becoming a father. Just before, a few weeks before training camp, he and his wife celebrated the birth of Stevie May, their little daughter, and I think that is also factored into how Neil has played. Just that's from the non-tangible emotional side of things, because this guy has always been capable of it. You just wondered, what some of the factors were that were holding him back. But I mean, getting up into the rush, and he and Nikolai Ehlers are having a little bit of fun right now over that overtime goal in Seattle. Did he touch it or did he not touch it? And we even had Neil on a post-game show. I can't remember. It might have been after the San Jose game. I'm not sure, but he talked about how I know it was on a Mason Appleton goal, and he pointed back to Mason and said, "That's your goal." But he said, those forwards are always fudging and chiseling for assists and goals. So they're having some fun with it. But the bottom line is, both of those goals in particular, who's in front of the net, providing traffic, taking the eyes away from the netminder? It's Neil Pionk. How many times have we already seen in 7 games this year, guys, where that offside D-man is rushing up to join the play, and the team that's defending don't pick up on him, and so a good scoring chance is created. So I think he's doing a fabulous job that way. But what I'm even more impressed with is how he and Dylan Samberg are operating inside of their own zone. It hasn't been perfect, but it never is for other teams either. But they haven't let those imperfections become too costly. So I think Neil Pionk's one of the big stories of the first 7 games of the season for the Winnipeg Jets.
I would agree with that. Kelly Moore is our guest on Saturday morning's edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, discussing the Jets and the Flames later on tonight. A game you can hear, of course, on 680 CJOB and Power 97. Big day for you good folks at CJOB. You got the Bombers as well, this afternoon in Montreal. So good thing you got both AM and FM airwaves to keep everybody happy later on today, Kelly.
Yeah, and digitally too. We've got the Moose on CJOB.com for their home opener.
Have some standards.
Well, there he is.
You just let anybody on there.
I see Dave Surfer Boy all
over. Color analyst today, Kelly. Color analyst alongside Daniel Fink.
How about tomorrow when the game's on CJOB?
It is. I've been bypassed tomorrow. Daniel knows which games to put me on the big time and which games not to put me on. So I'll take the home opener as a compliment, though.
Right on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Kelly, you mentioned him in his sort of start to the season as of late. Another guy, Pionk in a contract year. Ehlers in a contract year as well. I mean, the depth when it comes to the prospects for the Jets are at the forward group, the guys who are, knocking on the door to become NHL regulars. We know the names. Training camp was not that long ago. We remember them trying to crack that glass ceiling and become NHL regulars. Ehlers, pending free agency. If you had to put on your prognostication cap, how do you see that playing itself out over the course of the rest of the year and then into the offseason?
Well, there's been a couple of, as you well know, fellas, Nikolai has kind of slammed the lid on any kind of talk about that, just saying that, I don't have anything to report. And he probably is telling the truth there. And again, I'm only basing this on what we have heard and what little we know. But one of the things that Nikolai has said is, you guys know how much I love here. You guys know how much I have enjoyed, being with these guys for a lot of years. And these guys being Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor, the core group that have received extensions and are going to be here for the long haul. And so I don't know whether it's subtly or overtly, but Nikolai Ehlers, I think, is sending a message there. I want to be one of those guys. And you can only have so many of those guys. You can only tie up, so many contracts where guys are going to be playing into their late 30s. So I think there's probably still a little bit of a discussion going on as to whether, okay, from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, is this someone that we need to commit to 7 years for. And keeping in mind, Nikolai is only going to be 29 in February, so 7 years would get him into his mid-30s rather than his late 30s. But he's also going to be in a group that's all going to be in that same time frame. Especially, I'm expecting Morrissey and Connor will sign one more long-term contract each before they're said and done. So that's a lot of people to have there. And so I think that might be what's going on. And I just don't know if the Winnipeg Jets can afford to have, and I don't want to say afford from a financial point of view, but from a hockey sustainability point of view, to have that many guys in those kind of contract situations. And especially, as you just said, Drew, when you have whether it's the Brad Lamberts or the Nikita Chibrikovs that are coming up, maybe Colby Barlow, and boy, Braden Yager's off to a great start with the Moose Jaw Warriors, even though his team is not. So you've got some young people on the way in the system, and I think you have to take a long, hard look at balancing between and this is not to say that the Winnipeg Jets don't value Nikolai Ehlers, because they do. But in the overall big picture, how many of those contracts can you have, can you carry? And I'm thinking that that might be the fly in the ointment right now as to why there hasn't been an extension. And I don't know if there will be. I couldn't sit here and tell you, oh yeah, for sure the Jets are going to get something done before the end of the year. I don't think that is going to be the case.
Shades of Brendan Dillon, where you had the sort of the internal replacement coming up in Dylan Samberg.
Yeah, and at some point, Elias Salomonson. It might not be this year, but before that contract has expired, in the second and third year, that's when you would probably look at, Salomonson maybe being the guy that you bring into the fold. So that's the other thing we always have to take a look at too, not just the here and now, but 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yep.
You cannot prevent some of that young talent from entering into the lineup, because they're going to be ready. I mean, Brad Lambert is so close right now. Dave, you see him play with the Manitoba Moose. I think Braden Yager is going to be a real good player for this organization down the road. So that's the other part of it too. These contracts, if it's 6 or 7 years, which is what Nikolai Ehlers wants, it's what Nikolai Ehlers deserves. He's a phenomenal player, but I just don't know whether that's feasible with this organization.
I think it's a lot of good points, Kelly, and you almost look at a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, right, with all of their high-priced forwards. And
as as I was talking about that, and that's exactly what I was thinking.
But it's true though, right? Like we know, everybody knows, the big boys: Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Morgan Rielly, Tavares, right? Like. And you're right. And Neil Pionk, who we were talking about earlier, he's in the last year of his contract, right?
Yeah. So's Mason, Appleton.
Appleton, right? So you're right. It's and that's why Kevin Shoveldayoff, Larry Simmons, like those guys get paid the big bucks, because they have to figure out, okay, even with the salary cap going up, who can we afford not just next year, but who can we afford 2-3 years and you're going to benefit from having entry level contracts, like you said. Like Braden Yager, Elias Salomonson, Colby Barlow, Brad Lambert, like these guys are all going to be in the Jets lineup sooner rather than later. So I'm with you. It's such a tough one. Like I could just, as you were talking about, I'm like, man, like, it would be unfortunate if the Jets can't re-sign Ehlers, but Kyle Connor's got 1 year left on his contract after this year. We already talked about Pionk and Appleton, and so it's going to be really interesting to see.
And Cole Perfetti, after next season, I would suggest that you'd be looking at a long-term contract for him.
Yeah, and he's going to be making a lot more money than he's currently making if he keeps playing at a point per game place, right? Yeah. I wanted to ask you, like, just to pivot a little bit and go back to Kyle Connor, because I'll be honest, I've been impressed with him on the penalty kill, and I wanted to kind of get your assessment, because obviously they've tried Connor on the PK in previous years, but I think you'd agree they've kind of gone away from that. But I think that can actually benefit him at 5-on-5. Like, what are you seeing? Because I'm seeing a guy, when he's aggressive and he uses his speed, he can really be effective as a counter attacker on that PK.
Well, that play that he made on the third goal the other night, guys, I mean, that was absolutely superb to steal that puck just inside the blue line and to be able to get it over to Scheifele along the left side and then back in front of the net, and it's behind Joey Daccord. That was a superb play, and that's the one that we think of because it was so impactful. But he's been doing that since the start of the year. His backtracking, and I don't think it's just this year, but it seems more noticeable, maybe because it's with more frequency. And again, he's part of that top line that you guys were addressing that has been outscored 5-on-5, despite the fact that we are seeing more of a commitment from Mark Scheifele to play all 200 feet, and from Kyle Connor, and Gabriel Velarde came up through the Los Angeles system, so that's pretty ingrained in him. But they're playing, especially on the road, against the best that the other team has, so you're going to have some trade-offs there. But here's the other thing, for guys like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, who might not be on the inside of the cut line for the Four Nations Cup, but clearly they're motivated by that. Right now, if I'm Billy Guerin, who is making the decisions or the final decisions, he's got his inner circle to chat about that. But boy, I think Kyle Connor would be a real appealing target to have on that Team USA for the Four Nations Cup, and he's playing like a guy who wants to be there because of his play over the 200-foot surface of the ice, and not just in the offensive zone where he's been so impactful over the years for the Winnipeg Jets.
Kelly, one player I want to key in on is Rasmus Kupari, because he was the big unknown last year. Of course, he suffers the injury, so he's rehabbing for the first part of last season. And of course, we saw him play quite a few games for the Winnipeg Jets, but you really got the sense in training camp, as you were there every day, so you'd know that Scott Arniel had a lot of opportunity, or saw a lot of opportunity for Rasmus Kupari, and wanted to give him that chance. So through the 6 games, because he sat one game for David Gustafsson, he has the 1 goal. But just from your perspective, what are you seeing from Rasmus Kupari? Because clearly your organization wanted him to be part of the mix. He wasn't just kind of a throw-in. What are you seeing from him so far this season?
Yeah, I thought Dave, in training camp and even through the preseason, I thought if there was a player that was vulnerable to losing his spot on the team, it was Rasmus Kupari. But you cannot replace that speed. So I think that is what certainly endears him to the coaching staff. And he's such a great guy. Even though things were pretty tough on him last year, always had a smile on his face. He's just one of those real likable dudes, as they say. But his work in the face-off circle has been really impactful. He's been up over 55%. I know he broke even in Seattle the other night, so that number might go down a little bit. But that's and Scott Arniel would be a disciple of this. I know Rick Bowness was, and Paul Maurice before that. If you're the fourth line center, you cannot be getting consistently beaten at the faceoff circle. You have to win at least on a break-even basis in the draws, and Rasmus is doing that. And how many times have we already seen this year, guys, whether it's late in the game or it's on a penalty kill, so that Adam Lowry isn't always having to take those weak side faceoffs, that they have Kupari out there to take those draws, and he's won a number of them. So, I think that's been really big for him. But I just think he's using his size. Man, when he scored that goal in Edmonton, I think that took a lot of pressure off. I think he needs to still, that fourth line, as well as they're playing, they still need to find a nugget every now and then to contribute offensively. And I think, if there's one area where perhaps they've fallen off a little bit, they're not maybe getting or generating as many offensive chances. But again, how much do you want to nitpick when a team's 7-0? They're doing their job. But he in particular, though, I think is playing with a lot more confidence. And let's face it, he was playing okay up until he got hurt. And then when he got hurt and he missed that time, it was just too difficult for him to catch up, especially with a lineup. And Gustafsson was playing as well as he was. And then, of course, they get Sean Monahan. So then that brings Vladdy Nemesnikov down to the fourth line. There was no room at the end. All the rooms were taken by the time he was really back and playing. So it was a lot like it was for Logan Stanley for him. They're just nobody was giving him a chance to contribute. Where I think he saw that. I thought Dave, I don't know what you thought. I thought he had a so-so training camp. The first couple of games in the preseason, he left me wanting more. But I'm not a coach, and so when the team decided that we're going to stay with him for the fourth line, they've been rewarded for that, because it's like once he got the green light, I think he's really taken off with it.
Give us the rundown, Kelly. What can we expect on CJOB all day leading up into the Jets game?
Well, Derek Taylor and company are going to kick things off at high noon from Percival Molson Stadium.
Yes,
top
on
of Montreal.
Beautiful McGill University.
Royale. Yeah, I've never been. Have you guys been there, by the way?
Oh yeah,
I've never been there. It's definitely on the bucket list.
I mean, the stadium itself, they're doing their best to upgrade it, but it's not Princess Auto Stadium in terms of amenities, but in terms of just a beautiful setting. I've been there, a bunch of times, and it is a great sort of spot to watch a game.
At any rate, they're going to be there on the air starting at noon with the pregame show, and then they'll morph into the play-by-play at 2:00, right about the same time. Icy Dave Surfer, or Icy Cool, Icy Hot,
Icy Hot Dave Manu,
Icy Hot Surfer Boy is dazzling everybody with his incredible brilliance and intelligence on the Moose broadcast.
Maybe we should just call Dave Blue Crush. Remember that movie Blue Crush about the surfing movie?
Too, yeah.
Blue Crush.
And then we'll take to the airwaves with a pregame show at 4:00. John Shannon and the always entertaining Sean Reynolds are going to be on with us. And, some of the things we're going to talk about, the last time the Jets won in Calgary, Paul Maurice was still coaching the team.
Wow.
And so the Saddle Dome has not been a great place for him. Not that they go there often, but it's still, it's been a while, November 27th of 2021 since the last time they won there. And then we'll also talk, about how well this team has handled, the prosperity, if you will, and not getting too full of itself. Like, I loved what I heard coming out of practice yesterday in Calgary. No one's fooling themselves about winning that 7th game in Seattle. They know they have to be a lot better tonight. So certainly, lots of topics to cover from that perspective. And then, of course, Paul and Mitchell will be on the air with a play-by-play at 6 when we morph back over to CJOB, because by that time, Derek Taylor and company will have finished talking about a Bomber win or tie to host the West Final.
It'll be a win.
Oh, okay. Guaranteed.
No,
Guaranteed.
No, Kelly, it's the opposite. The Ginsburg guarantee is the opposite.
Yeah.
This is not the Ginsburg guarantee. This is as a Bombers fan. They're going to win.
Okay. Fantastic.
Death, if there ever was one.
Yeah, and I think the way this team, with the Blue Bombers, if I can just throw a little football talk in, the way they've responded to the big games over the years. Remember a couple of years ago, they went into BC and Nathan Rourke was the talk, and Zach Collaros and the Blue Bombers just completely dominated that game. And so, there've been other instances as well where I think this team is very capable of rising to the occasion. So I think we'll see that today in Montreal. It just, there's no way the Alouettes can have the same hunger that the Blue Bombers do.
They have nothing to play for. The Bombers have everything to play for. It's going to be a big, big day on 680 CJOB and Power 97. Kelly Moore, Jets game night host, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Always great to catch up with you, and we'll make sure we keep Manuk away from you moving forward. I understand you wanting a little bit of distance there.
And Kelly, I just wanted to say one more thing. It's obviously a super busy day. I hope Kyle Milroy gets a little bit of a break. Obviously, we went to Kelvin High School, so I know Kyle really well. So hopefully he's getting the break these days.
Yeah, no, he's going to be operating the game tonight, and he'll be keeping an ear open on that Bomber broadcast. But yeah, thanks for the timing, guys. It's perfect. I don't have to pay the second hour for the rental of that piano.
I keep expecting Jim Toth to walk into the shot wearing a tuxedo and start playing like some Beethoven.
Yeah. You know what? If Toth could play piano, boy, that would be a shocker, because I've seen him type.
Kelly, thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you bet, fellas. As always, I really appreciate the invite to come on with you guys.
Take care. There he
Cheers,
goes. Kelly Moore, 680 CJOB, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Always great to catch up with Kelly. We're way over time for hour number 1. Hour number 2 comes up next, where we talk about the Jets and the Flames, and then John Goins breaks down the Jets' power play and aggressive nature to start the season with us in about 22 minutes' time. It's a Saturday morning. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, presented by Play Now. It rolls on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We will remind you that on Monday afternoon, 12 noon, we're going to be live on location at City Place. Join us in the food court for a comprehensive preview of Monday's Jets Maple Leafs encounter in downtown Winnipeg, live from the food court. So if you are in the vicinity of downtown Winnipeg on Monday afternoon, be sure to join yours truly, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, a live on location special noon hour broadcast coming up on Monday, and then all the additional dates you see there on your screen will be live at City Place throughout the course of this regular season, bringing you pregame shows on select dates. Big thanks to our friends at City Place for their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Thrilled to get back there, get back in doing the shows there like we did for the playoffs last year. Going to be fun this coming Monday, right around 12 noon. Be sure to join us there for a comprehensive Jets Leafs preview.
Super pumped about this because, as you boys know, this is my dream come true. I can eat Mexican, I can eat Indian food, I can get a Subway sandwich, I can get McDonald's, and also talk about hockey at the same time. So really, this is mixing my 2 favorite things together, talking hockey and eating food court food.
Yeah, you left off heart disease, but that's also an added bonus that you're going to be able to get as well there, Ezzy. So that's exciting for all around. We're going to be there Monday afternoon.
Go hard or go home, Drew. That's my motto.
Hey, you got to fill that belly. You got to get through the rest of the workday by nourishment at noon hour to power through to your 1 o'clock nap. So I really appreciate that your dedication.
No, but that's why there's a new stomach pumping outlet store that opened at City Place. So right after we're done the show, I'll just go for a quick stomach pump and then I'll go back to work.
That's perfect. You can't go wrong then. It's like when you go to like Vegas or New Orleans now, and they have those places where you can just get an immediate IV the next morning to cure your hangover. I don't know if you guys have seen those.
I could have used that on your bachelor party, Drew.
Yeah, you could have. You're right about that. Dave's a Vegas denizen, so he knows all about the IV locations to get back up and on that horse to keep the party going in Sin City, if you will.
I'm going to agree with CMAC. This show is taking a weird turn.
It always does, C-Mac. You know that. It always does. Jets tonight in action in Calgary against the Calgary Flames. Post-game show is going to be right around 8:45, 8:50. The Flames are really one of the big surprises early in this season. Yep. They had traded away a lot of their talent. They had a mix of some veteran guys who were probably overpaid, Jonathan Huberdeau namely. They had questions about goaltending, having traded Jacob Markstrom, but lo and behold, Calgary Flames, they're flying high 5-1-1 to start this season. And as Kelly mentioned, it's been a while since the Jets had any success in Calgary. Remember last year, if I recall correctly, they played, I think it was on Louis Riel Day, an afternoon game. Somebody on the Jets had a hat trick in a losing cause in Calgary. They were up by a 4-1 margin or a 4-2 margin, the Jets were, and they ended up losing, I think, 8-4 or 7-4. So it's been a while since the Jets had some success in Calgary.
Yeah, and then who is doing well in net for the Calgary Flames right now? Undefeated Dustin Wolf, right, Dave? And we talked about it in the preseason, right? Remember we had Danny Austin on when the Jets had those preseason games against the Flames, and people were saying, well, he's a little bit undersized and he's really only put up fantastic numbers at the AHL level. Who does this kind of remind you of, Dave? Maybe a little bit of Thomas Milic, a guy who was WHL goaltender of the year, but isn't 6'4", and now look what he's doing with the Manitoba Moose, right, Dave? So I think there's some parallels between Dustin Wolf and Thomas Milic. And as I mentioned, Dan Vladar, easy for me to say, has been pretty good for the Flames as well. But yeah, you're right, Drew. I mean, this is a big, in addition to obviously the Jets being 7-0, the Minnesota Wild, we should mention. I don't think they've lost in regulation yet, have they?
No.
Or they've only
5-0-2. 5-0-2.
There you go. So the Wild, to me, are also a pretty big story because let's be honest, when you're talking about the Wild and the Flames, what were the expectations going into this season? Best case scenario, maybe they're a wild card team.
Yeah.
Like I still don't think, by the way, the Wild are making the playoffs, especially now that the Avalanche have woken up. I still think the Jets and the Stars and the Avalanche are the class of that division. We'll see what happens, though. But, yeah, I mean, look, whenever you've got Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri, and I would throw in Michael Backlund, the captain, he's been just a consistent player for the Flames for so many years. Mackenzie Weegar on the back end. And we talked about the goaltending's been pretty good. Not pretty good. It's been very good.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it like, the thing with the Flames is, yeah, they're in a rebuild. Let's make no mistake about it. Whenever you trade, Andrew Mangiapane and you trade Jacob Markstrom, right? Like this Flames team knows that they're going to have to go through some tough times. Connor Zary is a guy that I've always liked, former first-round pick, right? I think he played for Kamloops in the WHL. He's got, I think, 6 points in his first 7 games or something like that, right? So the Flames have got a combination of good veteran players, and they've got some good young players as well. And so, I mean, it's going to be a big test for the Jets for sure today.
I was right. It was Labor Day. Pardon me, Louis Riel Day last February, and the Jets did get a hat trick. Sean Monahan had a natural hat trick in the first period of that game. The Jets had a 3-1 lead. They ended up losing 6-3 after the Flames scored 5 on.
Right, I remember that game.
There you go. I got some things correct for once in my life. Go ahead, Dave.
Look, the Flames are. And as he's right, the Wild are a shockingly surprising team. I did not expect the Wild to be 5-0-2, but the Flames, I don't think anybody expected them to be where they're at, just suffering their first regulation loss. So, I mean, this is a Calgary team that the pundits said they weren't going to be very good, but this is why you watch hockey, right? This is why we watch the games, because every year at the beginning of the season, well, it's like you hear these authorities say, well, this team's gonna be garbage, this team's gonna be garbage, and I'm like, I always laugh because I'm always like, well, then don't play. Like, what? Like, why do we even have to watch the games? There's no point in playing. You already know they're going to be terrible. But thankfully, players don't listen to most of these guys, and they actually go out and play the games. You can't disregard the fact that, Dustin Wolf was a back-to-back AHL goalie of the year. That you don't get that by happenstance. That doesn't just, randomly occur that you're the best goaltender in the AHL 2 years in a row. So, and we've talked about it, right? It's always that question mark as to, what were the Flames going to do? Are they going to trade Jacob Markstrom and give Wolf that chance to kind of come in and see what he could do? And they've done that. And, so far, so good. 3 wins for him early in this season. And yeah, there's going to be some hiccups, but he's a very good goaltender. And yeah, clearly he's a little undersized based on the standard, or the average, I should say. But at the same time, he's showing that he can get it done. And again, the Flames aren't going down quietly. Now, do I expect this to maintain? No, I don't. But at the same time, and early in the season, only 6, 7, 8 games, depending on the team that's played, or if you're the Devils, you've probably played 15 games by this point. But the fact of the matter is that their special teams
11 for the record.
Well, is it okay? So that's, but it's pretty significant when you give the fact that the Jets have played 7 games, some teams have played 6 games, and you've already got a Devils team that's played 11. But look, the Flames have been good at home, 3-1-0. Their special teams aren't perfect. And again, we talk about it being early in the season. They're 25th on the power play, 24th on the penalty kill. So again, if you're looking at an area of exploitation, the Jets haven't been getting a ton of power plays, right? Like they only had one against the Kraken on Thursday in Seattle. And the fact of the matter is that this is going to be, that's probably the area you want to be able to exploit. So we'll see, Drew. You're right. Calgary plays them tough. Jets are going to have to be expecting a little physicality from these games. They're not the Smythe divisions with Joel Otto and Neil Sheehy, but at the same time, there's still some mixing and matching when you go out to Western Canada. So yeah, we'll see what it's like. But I expect it to be a good hockey game, and I expect it to be a close hockey game.
Jets are a better possession team 5-on-5 than the Flames so far this season. Jets just under 50%. The Flames lower down closer to the 46% mark. I know a lot of people asking who's in net for the Jets. Well, there's no morning skate for the Jets today. No. So we won't know the answer to that till probably about
Scott O'Neill, what he wouldn't say yesterday.
Right.
He wouldn't advise. He kept that to himself.
I think, guys, I'm leaning towards Hellebuck. I think, like Comrie's only played 1 of the first 7 games, but that was 2 games ago. So if we're just basing it on kind of Hellebuck getting, 4 of every 5 starts, I think you would just lean towards Hellebuck. That's just educated guess, or maybe in my case, an uneducated guess.
Yeah, both of our guesses here are uneducated. I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking this might be a time where you get Comrie in for another contest. You get him, another
his
game.
Home province.
Yeah, you get Hellebuck Monday against the Leafs. That's the game, of course. That's anytime the Leafs, for better or worse, we can all hold our noses. But whenever the Leafs come to town, it's got a little bit of an extra juice associated with.
It's got
that
cachet,
game.
Baby.
Yeah, there's some cachet there. Then, of course, Wednesday they go off to Detroit. So you would assume that is also going to be a.
See, that's what
Hellebuck
I was
game.
thinking. I was thinking Hellebuck starts tonight.
Yeah,
and he starts against Toronto. And then I think Comrie gets the Wings game. And keep in mind, there's a lot of former Jets on that Wings team.
I think Hellebuck always gets his home state games. Though.
That's what I was thinking.
Michigan.
Unless you're factoring the Eric Comrie revenge game against the Red Wings, we remember how
exactly, Drew. Thank you.
6 hours, I think, as a member of the Detroit Red Wings back in the COVID year when you had to carry 3 goalies and goalies were shuffled through waivers like nobody's business. But
I wonder if there will be a video tribute for Eric Comrie in Detroit.
that still goes down as one of the oddest, because I remember the Jets were able to claim Comrie back and assign him to. Sign him to the Moose, but there was something.
Didn't the Oilers have him a little bit that year?
No, Arizona.
He went Winnipeg, Arizona, Detroit, Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And I remember we had him on the show when he came back to Winnipeg, and it was just like it was a complete whirlwind for him.
Didn't the Jets have Anton Forsberg for a while there as their third goalie?
Good memory, Drew.
Yeah, it was the COVID year.
Times.
Yeah, it was a dark time. In fact, it was so dark it created the Illegal Curve post-game show, and that's a hurdle we still haven't been able to get over all these years later. There you go, Spency. He's saying the taxi squad. That's exactly what it was, where it was a little bit of chaos when it came to some roster juggling.
It's funny because I saw Spency in a taxi last night coming home from the bar.
The Jets need to, they've been good so far at matching their opponent and getting up for a game. And I think that this is going to be a similar occurrence. They know that Calgary's playing well, so I don't think there's any sort of sense of the Jets are going to get lulled into thinking that this Flames team has been, on paper a bit of a, expected to be a bit of a weaker team and things of that nature. Calgary's playing some great hockey. They're playing, they want to keep their good vibes going. They're not scoring as much as the Jets. They've got 26 goals in their 7 games. So the Jets are outscoring them. The Flames are giving up more goals than the Jets. Well, because every team in the league is giving up more goals than the Jets, basically. The Jets, under 2 goals against a game. So the Jets really have to, I think, have the mindset of continuing to do what they've been doing successfully. But I think better than they played against Seattle. The Seattle game was not their best effort of the season. They get away, obviously, with the victory. But I think that, they have to go with that mindset of similar to what they played against St. Louis, where they were, I thought, obviously not to start the game, but they got better as the game went on. And
St. Louis was for sure more of a complete effort. I would agree with that. And look, I think Seattle, you guys know before the season started, not that my predictions mean anything. Right. They're not worth the paper they're written on, but I think they're a good team. I would say the Kraken are probably the second best team the Jets have faced after the Oilers. And I realize the Oilers have started off slow, but look, the Kraken,
Minnesota,
we're already a decent team. Yeah, I still put the Kraken, just me personally, I can't speak for you guys. Yeah. I still have the Kraken. I think they're a better team than the Blues are.
The Kraken impressed me with their game in transition. They were a very quick strike transition team. I don't know that that's Calgary. I don't think Calgary has that same speed to their game. I don't think they have that same sort of transition. And that's honestly where the Jets have struggled the last couple of years, is against those teams with the quick strike transition abilities. So I don't think that's Calgary. I mean, Calgary's being
You're going to see a lot more dump and chase and kind of working the puck down low from the Calgary Flames.
Kenny and Mike?
Sorry?
What was that?
He said dump and chase. Kenny and Mike.
Oh, Kenny, I got you. Used to be Jason Bell and Mike, right?
Yeah,
but I think you're right. I mean, the Kraken are right up there as one of the faster teams. And that's why, guys, you look at a guy like Brandon Montour. Well, what's he really good at? He brings speed and puck rushing ability on the back end, right? Riker Evans, he was very impressive. Good young defenseman for the Kraken. And then you throw in guys like, Matty Beniers and Jared McCann and Jordan Eberle. Look, I'm not picking the Kraken to win the Stanley Cup, and I don't think the Jets are afraid of the Kraken, no pun intended. But I'm just saying the Kraken were a good test for the Jets. And you're right. I mean, they really put together 1.5 good periods of hockey in that game. But we talk about it all the time. They found a way to win, get that extra point, guys. That's kind of, to me, a thing about this winning streak that's been lost a little bit. The Jets could easily be 4-0-3, and they still haven't played their best hockey yet. That's the thing. Their best hockey was arguably in that first game against the Oilers, and we haven't seen it in 3-period stretches really in a lot of these games, right? You talk about the Minnesota game, the Chicago game, the San Jose game, obviously that was a butt whooping. So maybe 2 of the 7 wins, Dave, you would say they dominated, but in the other 5 games,
they find a way to win.
But they've been finding a way to win, and they're not afraid of the Flames. The Flames have been good to start the season at home, but the Jets know that if they play a similar way to the way they played in the second period against Seattle or in the second and third periods against St. Louis, they can beat the Flames. But the Flames are not a pushover. And I think at the beginning of the season, a lot of people thought the Flames would be, a bottom feeder in the Pacific Division. But let's be honest, guys. I mean, the Stanley Cup winner could come from the Pacific Division easily, but that division is very top heavy. It's a pretty bad division at the bottom.
Oh, no question about it. We talked about that, and that's, when we were doing our season preview, we talked about that, how you could very easily get, after, the Vegas, after the Golden Knights and the Canucks, there's a lot of, and the Oilers too, there's a lot of flotsam at the bottom of that division that a lot of teams can beat up on. The Sharks, the Ducks.
What about Jetsam?
Jetsam, Jetsam, if you want to call it that.
Isn't there a band, Flotsam and Jetsam, like a metal band?
I'll tell you what, I see John Goins is getting ready to join us backstage. So why don't we go to break and we'll bring John in, talk about the Jets power play, talk about the Jets special teams and how that's translating to on-ice success. So don't go anywhere. More smarter Jets talk coming up next with John Goins. It's the Illegal Curve the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now on this Saturday morning. Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're thrilled to welcome to the program from Daily Faceoff and TSN 690. He is the man behind the coach's room. John Goins joins us on the program. John, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me.
That we appreciate you making time for us. You did a great breakdown. We've been tweeting about it, so we had to bring you on to talk about it. A great breakdown of the Winnipeg Jets so far this season, and some of what they're doing on the ice and how that's translating into success. And we'll let you sort of delve deeper into it, John. But from my perspective, if I had to sum it up, sort of in a quick little pithy phrase, I would say controlled aggression is leading to success for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, aggression comes in different forms. It's not about just putting people in the fourth row of the stands and ripping people's heads off and stuff like that. There are ways to be aggressive, just in how you close gaps, how you defend, how quickly you get pucks, but also how you protect pucks and make plays with a ton of poise. I think, the other rhetoric we hear from a lot of coaches, the two main things that stick out when a coach gets hired: we want to be the toughest team to play against, right? I mean, ad nauseum, I think if we all had a quarter, we'd all be billionaires. Right? And then the other one now for probably the last 8 or so years is we want to play fast. And the thing is at times you could see teams where there is no context to any of those types of buzz terminology. There is none, and you don't see it in their identity. And it just lacks a lot of connective tissue from what was being presented in press conference to how they're actually playing, because playing fast without poise is a chicken with his head cut off. You're not making plays. You're playing fast. But what does that mean? Does that mean physical speed? Because at the end of the day, I look at it as, and I've talked about it with several people smarter than I am, like a Craig Button, for example. And I remember we bounced this idea around, was that, everybody says the players shouldn't think out there. And in fact, it's the development of technology, like your iPads, your phones, your computers, is the processor gets faster, which means what it sees or what it's, get the input that's coming in, they're able to process it that much quicker and react. But they don't react in panic. And that's the thing I'm seeing, especially on the Winnipeg Jets power play.
John, how important do you think it is to have so many interchangeable, talented players like the Jets have that can play in the bumper spot or move to the half wall and create motion? And obviously Gabe Vilardi, we know that he likes to set up his office. His office he doesn't have to set it up. It's just there along the goal line. But how important is that? Because a lot of the focus was, Ehlers in the bumper position. And you mentioned on the Daily Faceoff breakdown with Tyler and Frank, Braden Point, right, who's one of the best in the league at it. And Nikolai Ehlers said earlier in the season that, he wasn't familiar with playing that spot, but he would. It seems like to have Ehlers that can go in that position, or Mark Scheifele go in that position, I mean, it just keeps the opposition on their toes. And early on, I mean, the results speak for themselves, right?
Yeah, and besides keeping guys on their toes, the other part is like, look, there's 4 of us. Let's say we just add a 5th player. Well, if Dave is supposed to be the bumper guy, but he recovers the puck in the corner, and I'm supposed to be the half wall guy, do I go up to Dave and say, give me the puck and go back to your spot? You've just wasted 12 seconds opportunities where it's like there's always an action reaction in this game. So if Dave is in a spot reacting to a loose puck and he recovers, it's that next what? Now what? It's like, well, if I see the pocket of space and I'm, Dave is in that corner and I'm a righty and the net's here and I could fill that pocket, maybe we could get that quick strike. And it's all that I think sometimes we really just trying to force these guys to play robotic hockey, like X marks the spot, you stand here. And, we're taking away all the instincts And the instincts are what extracts the talent. It's not the other way around. It's not X's and O's that extract the talent and the skill level. So if we trust that the players understand the game plan and the concepts behind, say, a power play, and one of the major areas is create as many quick 2-on-1s as possible, underhandle pucks. We talk about Tampa. I've done other breakdowns where, and I mentioned it in the Jets breakdown, is underhandling pucks. Like the last year, New Jersey struggled on the power play because they would stick handle 45 times for every one pass. Whereas if you can actually have more passes per stick handle in a sequence, your opportunities open up quicker and with a higher level of quality. And if you can have that, plus interchanging players, understanding like, oh, I'm in Drew's spot. Okay, that's fine. Drew's going to go to another spot, and then the guys can move around.
It was usually the bench for me.
Yeah, but now you're letting the players make reads based on the instincts, allowing their processors to go, we see this is the output. And by doing that, you're speeding up how quickly you can create opportunities to score. And that's why I like to use that stopwatch element in my video breakdown, was even at 5-on-5 is how quickly they really act on a loose puck or at 5-on-5 on a breakout 200 feet away, and they go with that quick strike mentality. So they truly have context associated with one of the biggest buzz terms in hockey, which is playing fast.
John, one of the things that I find interesting is that this Jets team is largely the same as what we saw last year. And yet last year, their power play was mid-pack at, bottom third, and their PK was atrocious. Whereas now, obviously, small sample size, power play top of the league, and the PK is in the middle. How long does it take, especially, like I said, with the same group, two new assistant coaches who are getting a chance from under Scott Arniel to kind of put their own stamp on this team? But how long does it take for a team to really adapt? Can it be done in a training camp and then, really take effect as we're seeing right now?
Well, you got to wonder, with the fact that there wasn't a ton of turnover, you know that the best coaches at the highest levels are communicating with their top dogs in the off season. I think we'll start with there. So I'm not going to pretend to know was Arniel or Marty Johnson or one of these guys, or putting out, or Dean putting out video and trying to get input. I think one of the biggest misses a lot of times is going in at the highest levels, junior, college, and just going in and going, we're doing this, do what you're told. No, like, you're at the highest levels. It's, here's the plan, here are the pre-scouts, this is what I've seen around the league in terms of trends. What do you guys see? Because I'm telling you, Montreal, it took them a long time last year, a long time to realize that Monahan belonged in the bumper. And you guys know that as well as anybody, that the Montreal Canadiens power play did this, which is what made Monahan such a prized possession before the trade deadline, and what it did for the Winnipeg Jets power play.
Right.
And so there's an element of, you've got to create a partnership with these players. It's not like you just let them, here's the marker, here's the video, do what you want, but it's, let's create a partnership. I've done my work as the coach to present you facts, opportunities. What do you guys see? Then in turn, they participate in that discussion. They've got to come with tangible ideas. Now they feel like they have ownership. So when they aren't pulling their weight, it's them letting go of their ownership, as opposed to, the coach coming down hard on them. So now there's a pride element, like, we own this power play. And I feel that that's what I'm seeing from the Jets. I don't know any of the behind the scenes, but they just seem, and again, this isn't against Bones or anybody else, but right now it just seems that maybe there's been some internal conversations about, getting them to have a little bit of input, because for years we know what the power play was. And Kyle Connor's played several positions over the years with the Jets. But now it's like, is Kyle Connor coming down on the left side? Is he on his 1T side? Is Scheifele in the bumper? I mean, Wheeler was on this side. Like, it was at times too predictable. Mm-hmm. Now what it is the other part, and this is a term that I don't know if I've really come up with it, but I talk about absence of bumper. right? So you see Edmonton does it. You'll see Nugent Hopkins in the bumper. He pulls out of the bumper. You see Draisaitl goes into a really low bumper. He pulls out. And depending on the PKs, because the diamonds, a lot of times they are trying to nullify any passes to the bumper. Well, if the bumper isn't there, guess what? He's probably dropped down and he's created a 2-on-1 down low, which is a key component. So that's what I'm also seeing. There's a lot of the examples I put in the video breakdown where there is no bumper. They're there for support, and then you go play a little hide and go seek, and then all of a sudden you move to another spot and you see them 3 down low. Well, how's a PK with 1D probably at net front because they're playing a diamond, for example? How are they going to box out or battle against 3 guys? So I think that there has been some sort of connection with the players to get a little bit more input, to pull out the instincts, let them have some ownership over it, because is it sustainable? It's not going to be this sustainable. That's for sure. Just like, do I think Buffalo 0% is sustainable? No, I don't think so. Do I think Edmonton staying in the bottom 3 of the league is just no? But last year also Detroit came out like a house on fire on the power play, and they did something that a lot of teams weren't considering. They were going back with 2 defensemen on their top power play, but a key for them was absent of bumper. They were underhandling pucks. They were moving pucks really, really quickly so that they could strike as often as possible. And I always kind of say is you strike, you recover, you repeat. You possess, and then you repeat. And at times when the quick strike isn't there, then you go to the possession mentality to create that strike, recover, repeat. And right now the Jets are really good at recovering pucks as well.
Well, so let's talk about recovering pucks, because you're right. It's one thing to sort of get the clean zone entry, and the Jets have been pretty good at that as of late, especially when you have a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, who's a human zone entry. Kyle Connor, 5-on-4, pretty adept at getting zone entry as well. But the recovery of the pucks, what are you seeing that the Jets is making the Jets so successful at that aspect of the power play?
Well, there's not one of these like, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Like it's really, again, going back to that processor. Like they process the game. It's almost like it's becoming a little predictable. If a shot's coming from which it is a lot at times. Like I learned a long time ago from a Craig Ramsey is, let's say a right shot at 5-on-5 flying down the wing, and he's on the right side, right shot,
left side,
right. So so if you're someone that's on the ice on that line mate, and he's going to go with the big clap bomb, go to the weak side boards, right? Go to the weak side boards. You're keeping that puck in, and then you can create something. So there's a certain amount of, they're making just great reads that seem predictable to them. That's so they're quick on pucks. Even if the PK is maybe even slightly ahead of them, they're closing that. And then it's how everybody else reacts. So if they win a battle, they could almost blindly rim it behind the net to the weak side because they know they have an outlet. At times, if they're being squeezed on the boards, they have a guy just behind them where they can blindly pop it into a pocket of space, which again creates that quick strike. So it starts a lot of times with that lowest man, whether it be a Velarde, whether it be who's on the second one net front. I'm trying to think. I know IFL is around
Nino Niederreiter.
Nino Niederreiter, right? Yeah. So these are guys with wide frames, let's call it the way it is. Low, big butts, the big, right? Like the hockey frame, they get low and they protect that puck, but they know that they're going to get it, not to dangle out of the corner. They know they're going to be under pressure. It's how quickly they can rim release, pop it into a space, but if need be, hold on to it until they have support.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to stick on the power play here for a second, because obviously, this has been a hot button topic here for not just a couple years, going back many years with, Nikolai Ehlers not getting enough first power play ice time. And I wanted to ask you as a coach, how hard is that for the opposition when basically there's not a real drop off from the first power play unit to the second power play unit? Obviously, the talent is higher with Scheifele and Connor and Ehlers on the top power play unit, but Nino Niederreiter, asked these guys, like before the Jets acquired Nino Niederreiter, he was a guy that I was saying, obviously, I just throw out guys all the time, Dave, and John, and I get lucky once in a while, but Niederreiter just has been such a perfect fit because not only has he been great at even strength with Lowry and Appleton, but he goes out there on the second power play unit and he scored against Seattle. It didn't count as a power play goal, but for all intents and purposes, 3 seconds had passed since the power play expired. So it was really a power play goal if you want to, really get technical here. But it just seems like a guy like Niederreiter, Neil Pionk on the back end, like they're just how I guess long-winded answer. Sorry, John here, but I've had a little bit of coffee to drink. But how hard is that for the opposition when you can put out a second power play unit that's just as dangerous as the first power play unit?
Well, it's tough because in the, everybody talks about matchups and the thing with matchups, it's not what it used to be. However, as a PK, you get that opportunity, right? So power play is getting called. The referee tells the power play, what side do you want the face off? And then they go to the PK team. All right, you got to send your boys. And typically you see, okay, we're starting on that side. Typically you're getting the first PK unit. But the reality is some teams, if they don't have that luxury, because right now they're basically getting 50% of their power play goals from both units, right? Each. I'm looking at Ottawa numbers. I'm looking at other teams, and it's more like 70-30, 80-20, 90-10. It's not typically that evenly distributed. So what that does is, let's say those top dogs on the first unit, let's say they just had a shift. Maybe they got dragged out and what do most teams do? They're like, well, shit, we got a first power play. We got to send the first power play unit. And they might be half in the bag. Well, this goes, we can send the freshest unit. That's number one. We could send the freshest unit physically and mentally on every first face-off for a power play. That's a huge help. But the fact that now they are scoring at basically an equal pace, now there becomes also a bit of an internal competition, a healthy competition. Because if the first power play doesn't go like, oh man, we gotta drag this out. We gotta drag this out. And they're not. They're going out there 55, 60 seconds. They're not going 90 seconds, 80 seconds, because they know, hey, we got to trust those guys because they're doing just a good enough job. And if PP2 starts, it's not going to be like, coach, what the hell are you doing? It's going to be like, oh man, like this is where we're at. It's a luxury. It's a luxury. Now, will it stay 50-50? I doubt it. You mentioned Neil Pionk. I was raving about Neil Pionk in that breakdown. He's consistently that 35-point D-man. I think if he continues on this pace, he could push for 45, but he also underhandles pucks. He skates really well. He doesn't overcomplicate things. He's got that great sifter of a wrist shot through crowds. And when you have two units like that, even if at the end of the year it's 65-35, that's a massive, massive luxury to have. Look around the league where some teams, their first power play unit might even have more talent than Buffalo. I mean, look at Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo 2 years ago was top 10 in the league. Last year, it was like absolutely dropped. And now they're starting the year at 0%. I went through this as a coach when I went to Baie-Comeau. They had a lot of guys that wanted to stand in one spot. They just wanted to stand in one spot. I wanted movement. We started with 8% in the first 15 games. We went through analytics. I consulted with an analytics person. We looked at the video, said, guys, we're almost there. The next 50 games, we were over 30%. But you needed that buy-in a little bit as well. But the thing is what is sustainable, what isn't? But I never had that luxury of having. The last time I had that luxury, I was coaching the Lac St. Louis Lions, my last year midget AAA, and 6 of those guys were drafted in the NHL. So that's a hell of a luxury to have, and the Jets have it right now.
That was what I was going to ask you, John, is do players want movement on the power play, or do they prefer more of the stationary setup? Like, do you have to get buy-in from players to have that free-flowing approach, as you just referenced with your time in Baie-Comeau?
I think they've got to understand, it's know when to hold them, know when to fold them. There's times when you need movement, and there's times where you could be maybe a little bit more static. The reality is too many of these young players, male and female, have been turned into robots from the young ages of Adam Pee-wee Bantam. I see it today, and it's X marks the spot, and Drew has to be here, and Dave has to be here, or else. And it's a putrid way of developing young hockey players. It drives me absolutely bananas. And so when, let's say, the guys would come to midget AAA, we would get guys to play all kinds of positions. We'd have guys that were dominant provincially at their age level to play different spots, to play net front. Well, I'm a half wall guy. Good. I didn't see that on your birth certificate anywhere. So guess what? I had one player he's playing at RPI right now. He was very much like a Kyle Connor.
I hope not like a Drew.
No. And he was like, and when I showed him at that time where Connor would play net front and goal line, and then sometimes end up on the flank. And he was like, you know what, coach, now I see it. I'm in. And it was like little things like that where you can't just ram it down their throat. You got to come up with tangible examples. Now you go to Baie-Comeau. They had a big year the year before. Now they're static. Nathan Legare had scored 40 goals in his draft year, and he wanted to play the Ovechkin spot. Well, as we've seen, Washington, I'm not talking about this year, and I'm not even talking about the second half of last year, but for about 2.5 years, that power play dropped dramatically because you shade over to one guy, and if Backstrom's not in the lineup, then Kuznetsov is not as relevant anymore because they don't have their exchanges. Then Oshie, you can't get Oshie open up as much, and their power play dropped dramatically. So there has to be, you got to practice, and you got to say, we're okay with the power play not putting up big numbers early and often. Just trust that there's times that we're going to have to get a movement. You're going to have to be on your forehand sides coming downhill. You're going to have to be on your 1T sides. We could have one guy on his forehand, one guy, like you've got to work through it. But I think one of the biggest hindrances is from Adam, Pee-wee, Bantam, Midget, and even Junior. We turn power plays into robotic systems versus letting these guys extract their talent through instinctual reads and having a good pre-scout.
Really good insight there, John. And I just have a quick question for you in terms of what your thought process is in terms of using high-end guys on the PK. Like there was a lot of talk in training camp, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, they were going to be used on the PK. Not so much so far early in the season, but just from your perspective, first of all, is that a tough sell to get guys like that to say, listen, we're going to need you to play in this role? And also, what is your thought process on using high-end guys like that in a PK?
Well, I think that there's definitely a balance right off the bat. So if your team is undisciplined in a particular night, or typically an undisciplined team, and you take 3, 4, 5 penalties, and you're not a team where your skill guys play a lot of power play, penalty killing, they could rot on the bench. There's that element, right? Now they're getting pissed. They're just sitting there and now again, it depends on the depth of your forward group. So can you start with your Lowrys, for example, and I guess Appletons and guys like that, and then say the last 20 seconds, get Scheifele over the boards, get Connor over the boards, because you're out against a tired power play, and you're probably out against the second power play unit, or you're even up against the power play unit going, oh man, let's get off. We got to go to 5-on-5 soon. And you catch them in a bad line change. The other element is really good offensive players can instinctually know, oh, I know what that guy wants to try. So they could like bait them by putting their stick here, but boom, they cut it off over here. So again, you got to know your group. I did a Colorado breakdown last year, and they had when they got Trennan and Duhaime and guys like that, and they filled their bottom 6, it allowed them to alleviate and take a bunch of time away from McKinnon, Rantanen, guys like that. And I remember doing, I think it was about 5 out of their top 6 forwards or 4 out of their top 6 forwards average 0 to 6 seconds of PK per game in a stretch where they really got hot in the second half of the year, which gave them a lot more, fuel in the tank. So I think it can be a game-to-game basis, but I think that talented players who have, really fast and quick processors with great instincts should be used on the PK, but also you don't want to overtax them. You see it with some teams in the NHL, a guy is first PK, you see it on defense, blah, 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 blah. And what happens by the third period, they're making silly mistakes they otherwise wouldn't use. So in there is a balance, but I think those top guys always have to be ready to PK, because you might be late in a game, you might be down by 1 and you got a PK, but you might also need a goal. you're not just going to throw a guy over and he has no clue what to do.
John, just one last question for you here, and it's not, I know we're a Jets show, but this isn't a Jets related question, but we mentioned you were the head coach of Baie-Comeau and obviously Cape Breton as well. And I wanted to ask you about Ivan, who I saw is the first player to ever have the same first name and last name in the NHL, but obviously you coached him and you had a part in his development. I mean, how nice was that to see him score his first NHL goal for the Avs?
Well, it's awesome. And it's awesome in the scenario that it's in, right? With the Avs having so many injuries up front. And funny enough, another former player plays on that power play unit, which is Jonathan Drouin. And here goes Ivan. And I know his agent quite well. Ivy was, he was a guy who came in his first year in Cape Breton when I was actually in Baie-Comeau, and they had a loaded team. So he wasn't getting many offensive, like a lot of power play, definitely wasn't getting PK. Then COVID hit. He didn't come back over for a bit, and then he came back over. They were the worst team in the CHL. We went in there, and like the guy eats, breathes hockey, eats, breathes training, doesn't take a day off. And, there were some things that I wanted to help him open up. And one of the things was PK. And so it kind of lends itself to a highly skilled guy playing PK. Mm-hmm. But then when we went to power play, here's a guy who was always playing the same spot, and always shooting the same way. And after a while, it's like, no, let's get you here. Let's get you there. Let's get you interchangeable. And it was really cool to see, because he started on the fourth line, and he started seeing him play in different, with more responsibility, if you will. And considering where Colorado started those first 4 or 5 games, and now where they're trending, and to see him score a power play goal assisted by Nathan MacKinnon, that's a really cool feeling for him. I texted him, told him I was proud of him, and, just keep doing what you're doing. But here's an undrafted player who skates really well. He's got some solid instincts. And I think a lot of teams might kick themselves here in the next year or two that they didn't take a swing at him.
Okay, John, as he said the last question, but he's lying, because I've got one more for you.
I have too much to talk about with you, John.
Well, no, but this is not Jets related, but it is tied to the Manitoba Moose, of course, because former Moose coach Pascal Vincent, who is now the head coach in Laval, his hometown. You, of course, cover the Laval Rocket. They're 4-1 to start the season. How is the former Jets assistant coach, Moose head coach, doing with Laval?
He's got them playing, we go back to what we started talking about, playing fast. He's got them playing really fast. You should see their power play right now. These guys are moving the puck around. There's not that much body movement, like player movement, but the way these guys are zipping the puck around, our play-by-play guy, Sean Campbell, who also does the Montreal Alouettes, he didn't do the first home game the week before, and I warned him. I said, watch, you're going to see. And then the first power play came up last night, and it was like, bang. It was like 3 chances in 13 seconds. Goes down the other way, and he's got them playing fast. He has them defending quickly. It's still a very young team. They had some nice pickups, guys that I didn't really know, Zach Hayes and guys like that on defense. But he has them playing really connected in all facets of the game. Their power play numbers are up. Their PK numbers are way up. Again, small sample size, but so far he's got these guys playing on their toes. And, even from last night, they were up 3-0. They let Utica crawl back, make it 4-3. You could tell, like, I look at the bench. What's one thing I like to do as a color analyst is look at the coaches' reactions on certain things. And I mentioned it. I go, well, Pascal's got to have several teachable moments here for video sessions, whether it be as a team or certain young guys. But that's what he is at heart. He is a teacher, and he's going to take that time with those players, and they're just going to get better, and they're going to benefit from his experience.
John Goins is a Habs and Rocket analyst on TSN 690, does great video breakdown in the coach's room for Daily Face-Off. John, appreciate your time. Appreciate that great insight into the Winnipeg Jets. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take care, John. Thanks
Cheers,
so
John.
much. There he goes. That was a great guest, great insight. I saw somebody in the chat say they were going to go back and listen to that clip, that segment 3 or 4 times as he broke down so much of the good that's happening with the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have that available for you. It's in the podcast. It'll be in the immediate replay on YouTube. Great insight from John Goins about the Winnipeg Jets and a lot of their success so far this season. I'm going to bid you both adieu. I'm going to bid everyone adieu. I see Ruben's in the room now.
We got our third. We don't need you anymore.
There you go. You don't need me. I'll let you guys wrap the show. We'll see you for post game later on tonight. Thank you, everyone. David's still here. Ezzy's still here. The kids are still here. The party rolls on. Dave M, take it over from me, my friend.
All right, let's go. No
Are you guys ready for a Manuk Moose Minute?
Yeah.
Is that what they're saying? They're saying hit the bumper. Is that what the boys
want? A Manuk Moose Minute, Dave.
Well, I give the people what they want as best I can. So let's get right into it. The Manuk Moose Minute coming your way.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Manuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Well, okay. Well, we're gonna have to mute Ezzy's mic. Just the kids won't know that it's muted, so they'll just think that they're being talking to Ezzy's kids. But there's nothing really Moose related to talk about yet. This is an afternoon game. In about 3 hours, I'll be joining Daniel Fink on the broadcast, as Drew said, on the 680 digital 680cgob.com website, so you can listen to us call and talk about that Moose game. That'll be 2:00 start. We don't know the lineup yet. As soon as I do, I will tweet that out from the IC Dave account, of course. But there's a lot of excitement for the home opener, and a lot of guys, especially a lot of the Manitoba guys. We talked about it. Dawson Barteau from Fox Warren and Mark Lewinsky from Dauphin. Those are a couple of Manitobans, and they talked earlier this week about how important the Moose are, Ezzy, and how growing up, I should say, how important the Moose were to them. So you'll get to see Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Elias Salamonson, and all the rest of the Jets prospects this afternoon. Well, we don't know the lineup yet, so that's who we think we're going to see to this afternoon. But it should be a lot of fun, and we've already given away 4 tickets in the Illegal Curve Zone to one lucky IC subscriber. And guess what? 4 more tickets are available. I should go like this. 4 more tickets, Ezzy, are available for Sunday's game. I offered them someone. They haven't gotten back to me. Well, that's the cutoff. The show's ready to go. I mean, I can give them away at the post-game show. If you want to go, send me an email, dave@illegalcurve.com, or ICDave on Twitter if you'd like to go see the Jets of the future today. So in the present. And that will be at 2:00 start. And then, if you want to go see them tomorrow at 2:00 as well against the Rockford Ice Hogs.
And Dave, sorry, I had Ruben and Ariella both with my headphones on, so I'm not sure if you mentioned that it's the Hockey 101 game. So there's going to be
I have not yet.
Lots. That's a new initiative.
That's tomorrow.
Oh, sorry, that's tomorrow's game. Is the Hockey 101 game. So sorry, I misspoke. But I know that Hockey Manitoba is going to be on the concourse level. I told you that, Dave, off air. Ruben's back. Hold on, I'm going to lock the door here for the last minute of the show. There we go. That's why I do the show most of the time at your house, Dave. Like people always ask me, like, why do you always do the show at Dave's house? Well, if I don't lock the door or go to Dave's house, Ruben and Ariella make an appearance on the show. But I know that the chat was loving it, especially Spency, who I'm going to ask to babysit the kids pretty soon. So no, but I mean, just going back to the Hockey 101 game, there's going to be a little bit of a different thing they're doing with welcoming a lot of newcomers. Folks that are English isn't at their second language. So I know speaking to Jeff Major, who Dave works from Moose, there's going to be lots of newcomers. And like I mentioned, Hockey Manitoba is going to be on the concourse level. So if you have an opportunity, stop by, talk to Dustin and Shay, my coworkers at Hockey Manitoba, find out what we do. There's a lot of exciting things that we've got going on for grassroots hockey. So, I mean, with the Jets playing, the Moose playing, the Bombers playing, I mean, there's nothing better. The Dodgers picked up the big win, Dave. Like, great time of year.
Yeah, that was a hell. We talked about that before the show got started. That was, I've cut ties with baseball. I haven't been watching very much, but I got to tell you, I watched part of the World Series, and that was a phenomenal way to conclude that game. So that was a lot of fun. And the Jets prospects, Kevin He named the 19th captain of the Niagara Ice Dogs. I've already mentioned that, of course, but he and Colby Barlow went head-to-head. I didn't realize, by the way, on that first goal that Kevin He scored, Barlow actually got the assist inadvertently. He put the puck in front of the net. He intercepted it and then put it into the back of the net.
Well, they are buddies, so maybe he's just like, I want to see you, continue racking up the points, right?
Exactly. So that was it. Marcus Lopinen, the 2024, I think, was he a fifth rounder or fourth?
He was
rounder?
Fourth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
so.
fifth. I'll check.
I'm not sure. It's funny. I should know since I'm pretty sure I tweeted it yesterday. But regardless, Marcus Lopinen, he had a goal and assist for Victoria. Other than that, it was a quiet night for Jets prospects in the OHL. Kevin He, Kieran Walton, Colby Barlow, and Jacob Julian. They were all shut out yesterday.
Lopinen's a fifth rounder, Dave. You're right.
Fifth rounder. Okay, good. Yep. And then Lopinen had 1 goal, 1 assist for Victoria in a loss. Brandon Yeager and his Moose Jaw Warriors, they got shut out by Tij Ginla, who had, I think, a hat trick. And
well, it's amazing when you don't have Jagger, Furcus, and Denton Matejchuk on the team, right? There's a bit of a drop off.
Yeah, exactly. So they were shut out. So nothing for Yeager. And then Connor Levis, I think it was weird. He had him. With the Vancouver Giants, they said he had a goal, but then nothing was posted. And then Alphonse Frey, the 2024 second rounder, as he scored his first goal for his Swedish team back overseas. He's playing in the Hockey Allsvenskan or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but basically the second tier of Swedish hockey. And then all the other prospects will be back in action tonight. And Zach Naring will be playing for Western Michigan. So keep up to date with all of the draft picks of the Winnipeg Jets, usually in note number 3 or 4 in the morning papers or on my Twitter account.
By the way, if we need someone to come on and to pronounce Swedish words, my only Swedish friend, shout out to Alexandra Kleiman, who used to work at Hockey Manitoba. We can have her on because she's fluent in Swedish.
Or former Moose play-by-play voice, Mitch Peacock, who is actually covering a lot of the Swedish hockey.
Is he fluent in Swedish?
I don't think he's fluent in Swedish, but he is
he knows a few things. Yeah.
He's a stickler for names, Ezzy. So we'll
I know how to pronounce it's Linköping.
There you go.
Can pronounce that.
Look at you. Well done.
A few things.
Hey. I knew Tings.
I know that from IKEA. Hey.
I knew Tingswood only because that was David Gustafson's hometown and where he was playing during the bubble year, the lockout year, whatever not lockout, but during COVID and stuff like that. So
Swedes produce a lot of good things: hockey players, meatballs, furniture, cars, right? Volvo.
Yeah, good call by you.
Love Sweden. Nothing but love for Sweden.
There you go. As he's got love for Sweden, he's got love for everyone. We've got love for all of you. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We won't be long without another one of our broadcasts because the Illegal Curve postgame show sometime around 8:40 p.m. after the Jets and Flames have done battle in Calgary. Our big thanks to Kelly Moore. He's fantastic.
I could listen to Kelly talk all day long about anything.
Manitoba Hall of Famer Kelly Moore.
He could literally talk about his favorite color for an hour, and I'm going to listen to it.
He's got that voice. For sure. So Kelly Moore, thanks. And John Goins. I like when I watched the video on Daily Faceoff and I posted it, of course, on illegalcurve.com, I knew we had to have John on. And John and I were just messaging and I said, okay, well, we got to have you on because that video was so good, so insightful.
Check it out if you haven't, because I know you posted it, Dave, and I know we got a lot of action on that post because the power play obviously has been such a early part of the success, right? So check that out. John knows what he's talking about. He's a former QMJHL coach, and he's a great guest. So hopefully we'll have him on again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So he provided a lot of insight. We hope you were able to glean quite a bit and hope you smash that like button before you head out for the rest of your day. Leave comments on these videos. I try and respond as best I can, except for dispensies because sometimes they're a little silly. And then
you mean God's gift to YouTube?
Well, that's sometimes, Ezzy. And of course, make sure you are subscribing to this channel and help this channel grow and get out to a wide audience. The other thing I was going to ask folks is our Facebook page. We get a lot of information, a lot of stuff that's coming on illegalcurve.com. Make sure you're liking it. Make sure you're following it. So make sure the social media for IC, let's not leave that stuff in the dust. The Twitter, the Instagram,
and TikTok.
Facebook.
For you youngsters out there, follow Illegal Curve on TikTok because it's
we're
let's be honest, it's a young person's game. We're in our 40s, Dave.
Yeah.
So we're more into Facebook and Microsoft Word and Excel and those types of things.
Yeah.
But for those youngsters on TikTok, make sure that you're following us because we've got over 1,000 followers. We've slowly built it up, and I know you post a lot on there, Dave.
Yeah.
Richie the Bauer rep, that Ehlers clip you posted on there. So make sure you're following at Illegal Curve on TikTok as well.
All right, there you go. Anyways, a big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the post-game show, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. They are, in no particular order, Play Now, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, City Place, Boston Pizza, Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. All right, folks. Well, that is it for Ezzy and I and Drew, who was with us for most of the show. We are next in action in just a few hours. So enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Lots of sports, Bombers, Moose, and then the Jets. We'll be back in a few hours. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow @Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.